Ever think about the tiny, unseen world living on and, well, inside our animals? We're talking about creatures that literally live at the expense of others, and they are, without a doubt, one of the biggest challenges in animal health. So let's dive into this really fascinating and super important topic, veterinary parasitology.
So let's just ask the question straight up, what exactly are these tiny freeloaders? Most of the time you can't even see them, but their impact? It can be absolutely huge, affecting everything from your pet's happiness to a whole farm's bottom line.
At its very heart, we're talking about parasitism, or Parasitology. It's a totally one-sided relationship. See that plus-minus sign? That's the perfect way to describe it. The parasite gets all the good stuff. That's the plus. While the host just gets the short end of the stick, the minus. It's basically the ultimate biological freeloader.
Okay, but not all parasites are created equal. We can basically split them into two big groups, and it all comes down to one simple question. Where do they live? On the outside or on the inside? And that gives us our two main types, ectoparasites and endoparasites.
Let's break those two down. First up, ectoparasites. These are the outsiders. They live right on the surface of their host. Think about things you might actually see, like nasty ticks, fleas, lice, and mites. Then you've got the insiders, the endoparasites. These guys, like roundworms and flukes, live inside the host's body, setting up shop in the gut, the lungs, or even the bloodstream.
So, to really get a handle on parasites, we've got to understand how they live, how they reproduce, and how they get from one animal to the next. It's all about their life cycles and the different hosts they rely on to survive. And here's where it gets really interesting. A lot of parasites need more than just one animal to complete their Jivan chakra, their life cycle. First, there's the definitive host. That's where the adult parasite lives, grows, and makes babies. But then there's the intermediate host. Think of it as a temporary motel where the parasite's younger stages hang out and develop before they're ready to move on to their final target.
So how do they get around? Oh, they have all sorts of clever ways. The most common is probably just being eaten, through contaminated food or water. Some, like hookworms, can literally just burrow right through the skin. Others spread by direct contact or can even pass from a mother to her baby before it's even born. And of course, a whole lot of them use a taxi service, like a mosquito, to get from one host to another.
All right, so we know how they live and how they spread. Now for the really important part. What kind of damage are we actually talking about? The harm they cause can be direct and obvious, or it can be indirect, and honestly, a lot sneakier.
The direct effects are what we tend to notice first. We're talking about really bad skin irritation that can lead to things like mange or charmorogue. You've got blood-sucking parasites like ticks and certain worms that can cause severe anemia. Some worms even migrate through the body, physically damaging tissues and organs as they go. And if there are enough of them, they can literally cause a traffic jam, blocking up the intestines or blood vessels.
But the damage doesn't stop there. In fact, a lot of times, the biggest danger is indirect. See, a parasite can be more than just a nuisance. It can be a delivery van for other diseases. They become what we call vectors, carrying and transmitting all sorts of nasty bacteria, viruses, and protozoa. And that can make a bad situation a whole lot worse.
Let's look at a few examples, and you'll see just how serious this gets. The Bophilis tick, for instance, transmits babiosis in cattle, a really serious blood disease. Then you have Culex mosquitoes spreading avian malaria to birds. And for all you dog owners out there, the Aedes mosquito is a huge problem because it carries heartworm. It just goes to show how one tiny bite can lead to a massive, life-threatening illness.
So with all these threats, it might sound a little bleak, right? But the good news is we are not helpless. We have a whole playbook for fighting back and getting these invaders under control.
Now, the best approach isn't just one magic bullet. It's what we call an integrated strategy. It's a three-pronged attack that involves using chemical treatments, bringing in some biological allies, and, of course, using smart management practices.
Let's start with the most direct method, chemical control. This is pretty much what it sounds like. We use specifically designed drugs and chemicals to kill the parasites either on or inside an animal.
Now, it's so important to use the right tool for the right job. For insects like flies and lice, we use insecticides like permethrin. For ticks and mites, we need something different. We use acaricide like amitraz. And for all those internal worms, we rely on anthelmintics. You've probably even heard of some of these, like ivermectin and albendazole. Each one is designed for a very specific enemy.
But hey, we don't always have to rely on chemicals.
The next step is really clever. It's called biological control, and it's all about using nature to fight nature. This means bringing in natural predators that can help knock down the parasite populations out in the environment.
A perfect example of this is using something called gambusia fish. If you have areas with standing water where mosquitoes breed, you introduce these fish and they just love to gobble up all the mosquito larvae. Boom, no more mosquitoes to grow up and spread disease. It's the same idea when farmers use ducks to control snail populations, because snails are often the intermediate hosts for really dangerous flukes.
And finally, we get to what might be the single most important part of the whole strategy: management control. This is all about changing the environment and how we care for our animals to make it way harder for parasites to even get a foothold.
One of the real game changers here is a technique called rotational grazing. See, a lot of parasites lay their eggs in manure, which then contaminates the pasture. But if you keep moving your animals from one pasture to the next, you leave all those parasite eggs and larvae behind. Without an animal to infect, their life cycle is broken. It's pretty brilliant. You're just using a calendar and a fence to do a job that chemicals can't.
And rotational grazing is just one piece of the puzzle. It goes hand in hand with other common sense practices: handling manure properly, making sure animals have clean food and water, staying on a regular deworming schedule, keeping any sick animals separate to stop the spread, and of course, having regular vet checkups. You put all those together, and you've built a really powerful wall of defense.
So there you have it. We've looked at what parasites are, the harm they cause, and how we can fight back. Really, understanding the enemy is always the first, most important step. So the final question is for you. Now that you know, are you doing everything you can to protect the animals in your care?